What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I'm coming at you with a Shark deck profile, which is the first one on the channel. I've never profiled Shark before. In fact, this is the first format where I'm actually tinkering around with the deck because I think it's been under the radar for quite a long time. Essentially ever since Age of Overlord, where this card, Xyz Armor Fortress, came out and his whole package has been available. I think Sharks have low-key been like a sleeper, really strong rogue to tier 2 deck. The boards it creates are really strong, it has a lot of good options, and I think it's just something that people haven't really explored. One reason I think they've gotten particularly better this format is there are less Omni-Negates in the format with Barone banned and of course Savage banned. So people are playing cards that are a little less good versus Omni-Negates just because they expect less. You know, cards like Evenly Match or Lightning Storm are good examples of cards people might be playing to a higher degree because Baron and Savage can no longer negate them. However, this deck puts up several Omni-Negates quite easily, and it doesn't play into certain popular hand traps. Like, it's obviously going to get hit by some of the low impacts, but it doesn't really lose to Nibiru very hard, and it gets to play an absurd amount of non-engines, so it has a lot of things going for it, and I've really enjoyed tinkering around with it. Before we hop into it, I do want to let you guys know we are extremely close to 15,000 subscribers, so if you like Yu-Gi-Oh! Content you like to see here, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out what I do here on the channel. And without further ado, let's hop into this Shark deck profile. Alright, so I've seen like several other builds just to see how other people were playing the deck, and I can tell I'm playing it quite a bit different from other people's lists. And I know there's a lot of very passionate members of the Shark community, so they might see my list and have some questions about it. Hopefully I can explain everything thoroughly as to why I'm playing it, how I'm playing it. But starting off with the very obvious 3 Buzzsaw Shark. This is 100% just the best starter in the deck. This card is pretty strong because it's the only like one card rank 4 in the deck. I mean, there is actually one more, but this is like the most efficient one card rank 4 in the deck. You want to open this as much as possible. Just overall the best starter. In Buzzsaw Shark, main target to be summoned, I would say, is the 2 Xyz Remora. This is my favorite card in the deck and the one that I think is the strongest. This is where I think Shark ceiling actually gets ridiculous. You have so many ways to abuse this card, even up to multiple times a turn, and it just spams bodies. So if you don't know what this does, you detach 2 materials from somewhere on your field, special summon him, and then he brings back 2 level 4 fish from your graveyard. And what this means is, 1, you're going to want a lot of specifically fish extenders so they can get to the graveyard for this effect to be relevant. But 2, you want to find access to this card, and there's a lot of cards that do that, and this just makes your board just filled with really powerful Xyz monsters by the end of your turn. I absolutely love this card. It's my favorite Shark. I mean, he's not technically a Shark, but he's my favorite Shark card by far. I think he's absolutely absurd. Next, I have 2 one-ofs that I'm not sure if I want to, like, take one out for a second copy of the other. It is 1 Lifeless Leaffish and 1 Botuniful Princess, so I think both of these have some reason to be played. Botuniful Princess essentially gives you an extra copy of Buzzsaw, which is nice. However, she is like unbelievably weak to Ash Blossom because you really want to keep a level 4 water monster on the field, which makes me kind of reluctant to play more than one of her. In fact, she might become a second Lifeless Leaffish, but I do think Buzzsaw Shark is the better starter by far. Lifeless Leaffish can get you to a rank 4 depending on the sharks you run in your deck. And it has a cool graveyard effect, but I find that graveyard effect doesn't come up unless you're in a pretty heavy grind game. So honestly, Leaffish ends up, like, unless you open Leaffish, it honestly ends up mostly being just a search for Buzzsaw Shark. So I'm playing 1-1 right now, but I think you can definitely, like, play multiple Princess, which I've seen people do, or play 2 Lifeless Leaffish. I'm not sold either which way. I'm just on 1-1 right now. Next is by far the strongest extender in the deck outside of maybe like Xyz Remora. That is the Abyss Shark. Abyss Shark is absolutely absurd if he resolves. He can be Ash Blossomed, which is a little annoying, but when Abyss Shark resolves, he summons himself as a free body, and then you can search any fish monster from your deck essentially, except the Botuniful Princess in this list. Most notably, that's going to end up being Xyz Remora if you have already normal summoned, or you can even search the Buzzsaw Shark if you haven't normal summoned. And yeah, this just, it can only go into number monsters, which is relevant because that means you're essentially only making Kragan with this card, but Kragan is of course an insane card for Sharks, so that's not even a big deal. But it's just an absolutely bonkers extender for the deck and something you definitely want to maximize at 3 bare minimum. There are ways to run even more copies of this Shark, which I'll talk about later. Then for some generic extenders, I have 3 Shathana, which is arguably the best extender, which I'll explain why in a second. And then I have 2 Silent Sea Nettle, which is a pretty solid extender, and 1 Minairuka. So these are the generic level 4 water extenders, we'll call them. Shathana is the best one because it has like the least amount of requirements. It doesn't lock you or anything. Start of your turn, empty board, you just special summon him, which is really solid. It's like an extender that doesn't use your normal summon, or doesn't need your normal summon, I should say. Sea Nettle is also good, but it locks you into water for like the whole turn, and that's pretty rough. Its graveyard effect is absolutely bonkers, but there's certain cards you just don't really play in your Shark deck because Nettle locks you, or sometimes even if you do run them, you just won't be able to go into them. And while these 5 are both good, the issue with the Shathanas and the Nettles is they're not fish. And that's actually huge. Like, I don't want to maximize on these cards that aren't fish, that are extenders, because that can make your Xyz Remora kind of bad later on. So I'm running different extenders that happen to be fish. Mian Iruka is one of those. This dolphin is a fish extender, however, it's the most finicky to use because it's very similar to something like a Paleozoic or a card like Lady Labyrinth, where your opponent cannot have a response to the water monster's effect being activated so that you can special summon this card. And it means there are times where you don't have the opportunity to use it as an extender, and it can end up just being kind of not live in your hand. One thing nice about it though is that it's able to be searched off of your Abyss Shark. If you've already normal summoned and have access to Xyz Remora, this is technically just another fish extender you can search. So yeah, that's sort of the reasoning for like the ratios and why I'm playing these. No Silent Angler, I absolutely despise that card. I know a lot of Shark players play it. I just dislike that card. If you're forced to use its effect and then you can't access Xyz Remora later because you can't special summon monsters from the hand, I feel like you're really limiting your ceiling. I would rather play other extenders that get you there without that severe lock. It also cuts you off of cards like Nettle if you happen to draw them later, or even Mian Iruka, and yeah, I just do not like Silent Angler. I just have never liked that card, so I'm not running it. The last engine monster in the deck is the 1 Crystal Shark. This card is nifty. I'm not like the biggest fan, and I don't think you have to run it. However, I do think if you're playing Lifeless Leaf Fish, this card is sort of relevant, because it means like Lifeless Leaf Fish by himself can make Stealth Kraken, or Dugaris, which I am playing, because this doesn't lock you into water and just needs to make another monster, which is Dugaris, and I think that's really strong. But yeah, 1 Crystal Shark. I think this card is okay if you're on Leaf Fish. The last of the extenders, and sort of what I'm playing over the Anglers, or even like the 3rd Nettle you can consider, and some people choose to play this, other people choose to play other packages. I am on the Instant Fusion, Double Ready Fusion. The good thing about these is that they special summon a level 4 fish extender in Rare Fish, without losing, or like without having any stipulations, like something like Silent Angler. You just get a fish extender that has been properly fusion summoned that can come back off Xyz Remora, which is fantastic, and that's really where I love these cards. And you don't need anything on board to use them. It's another really strong thing about it. The downside is that you are sacrificing cards in your extra deck, right? So that does come up. I'll explain what you can run over the Rare Fish and sort of what this list is sacrificing by running this Rare Fish package instead of Silent Angler, so that you can see and sort of like understand the trade-off and decide what you want to run. But I like the fusion spells. I think they're just really good because they are specifically fish extenders. Next, this deck plays 2 very specific bricks for your extra deck package. It is the 1 Full Armored Xyz and the Armored Xyz. These cards, put kindly, are not very good. You do not want to draw these. They're sort of just engine requirements for the Xyz package you run that search them, and you get both of them, which is pretty solid value, so they are worth running. And while I say they're not great, Armored Xyz going second is actually pretty powerful. It's not bad, especially with your Lancer in the extra deck. And the Full Armored Xyz you kind of do need as an extra interrupt if you're going first. I definitely would side this out going second though. Overall, they're not amazing cards, but they do come up, especially going second in the case of Armored Xyz, and you do need to play them, but they can be very frustrating to draw. Alright, into the non-engine. This card is still kind of considered engine, but it is something you don't have to play. In fact, I see a lot of people not play it. That's the 3 Desires. I've seen more Shark lists recently not be on this card. Like, I've seen quite a few deck profiles and no one was playing this, which I think is absurd. I've seen people choose to play Pot of Prosperity instead, which is just blasphemous to me. Not that Pot of Prosperity isn't an insane card, don't get me wrong, but this card is beyond bonkers. Like, this card is Lily Pot of Greed in this deck. I do not care about any, like, if I banish both of these, I still just, like, don't care. Like, I'm not upset about banishing both of the bricks, which I don't know if that's the reason people aren't on Desires. The only thing that would be slightly frustrating is banishing a 3 of, like Buzzsaw Shark, which even then you don't actually care. Or banishing 2 Xyz Remora, which would still be fine. Like, there's really no drawback to this card whatsoever. This card is insane. I mean, it's Pot of Desires. I'm not going to explain it too much because people know it's really strong, but I'm just surprised other Shark players, or like not all Shark players are on it, because I think the card is fantastic. For hand traps, I'm on 6. I have 3 Ash Blossom, which only on 6 hand traps and playing Ash Blossom is a little bit risky because you do run into Hida when you're playing Ash. The thing is, I would play Nibiru, in like any other deck, but Nibiru's really rough in this deck because you can't get rid of it and then it turns off Abyss Shark, so you can't really run Nibiru. At least maybe you can, but it would definitely limit your plays to some capacity. And then I'm on 3 Imperm, which I think this is pretty standard. Definitely one of the hand traps you're going to want to play even in a low hand trap deck because it's still a board breaker as well. And the other non-engine I choose to play are mostly board breakers. So 3 Forbidden Droplet. I really like this card in this deck. Going second, it's not like you amass so much value or can play with so little cards that it's absurdly good. However, especially going first, I really like it because there are times you get like this card and the Armored Xyz for free. And you can just there are board states where you don't actually have a good Xyz to go into with this card. And you can just discard it for Droplet. It's a really good way to get this card in the graveyard, which is where you want it, even if you can't Xyz summon. So that is something that comes up a lot. There are ways to get both of those cards going second as well, where they can be Droplet food, but Droplet's just overall a really strong card and it deals with a lot in the format. It's good going first and second. I really like it. 2 Cosmic, I think this card is fine enough. This, Fire King, Snake Eye has not been as popular as originally thought it would be. So maybe you could take this out for other board breakers or even more hand traps, something like Ghost Ogre. But I do think Cosmic is still a really solid card in the format. Definitely not horrible. You can choose to play I think Ghost Ogre or Effect Veiler is another good slot over this. I just choose to be on Cosmic for now. It also combos pretty well with Droplets because it's just a free send. Then I have 2 Triple Tactics Talent and a Called by the Grave, just really good answer to hand traps, but also these 2 are board breakers. Called by the Grave is also insane for so many different reasons into so many engines, as they go second card even for things like Princess. But yeah, I really like running all 3 of these. These are really solid. And then the last card in the deck is the only flex spot that isn't a go second card. We have the One Gozen match, which is pretty fair enough in Sharks. You're gonna make this, or you're gonna abuse this card to pretty good efficacy if you have Kragan on your field, because this card plus Kragan is sometimes just FTK. Very, very powerful Floodgate. And that is it for the 40 card main deck. On to the extra deck, which I will sort of explain. Cards you could run over the Rare Fish if you decide not to run that package. For me, it's the best, but maybe you do not want to play it like that, so yeah, going into the mandatory cards though, we have 1 Xyz Armored Fortress. This card is bonkers, because it essentially turns any Xyz you've made that you want to make something like Bahamut Shark, and you just get to overlay this for free. And then you have this card, the Full Armored Crystallize Zero Lancer. I've never tried to say that name, so I probably did it horrible. Crystal Zero? Yeah, there's no Crystallize Zero. This card is actually a pretty good card going second, being able to negate all monsters your opponent controls, which is actually huge. But overall, especially going first, you're just using it to overlay over the Xyz Armored Fortress, which gets you another Xyz material for your Full Armored Dark Knight Lancer. This card is bonkers. Again, this is the package that I think has taken Shark far above where it was pre-Agov. And this was a deck I was also sleeping on for a long time, but I think this package really is insane for the deck. It gives you another extender, it gives you 2 free cards, which actually have some application. Also just a good go second package. And it has an effect to add back cards that have Xyz in their name to your hand, which is really good for Xyz Remora, either for follow-up or just if you're using that to get to your combo. It's a truly insane package, and what I think puts Shark higher on a tier list for me personally. I really like this package. Then probably the most important cards in the Shark deck would be the 2 Bahamut Shark and the 2 Totally Awesome. Forgive all the random colored sleeves because I'm using these in so many other decks right now. Yeah, you make a lot of Toad in this deck, and you can make both turn 1 fairly easily. And this is what I mean by other decks don't have Omni Negates anymore for the most part, but you still have many, so cards people might be playing that are good versus decks without Omni Negates are suddenly not that great versus you. So yeah, this is really strong, and obviously Bahamut Shark you can just then overlay into your Armored Lancer package, so that is an extreme amount of value. So even if Bahamut Shark gets Veilered, you're still turning it into a Search 2 and a full Armored Lancer. Then I have 2 Kragan, which is something you're going to go into a fair enough amount of times because it's one of the main Shark cards. And I play 1 Kragan spawn, you might as well in the actual Shark deck, because if your Stealth Kragan is destroyed, it can special Kragan spawn. Then a solid, just rank 4 water monster is Abyss Dweller. Obviously, you're going to play this in your water-based rank 4 deck, and if it's good into the matchup, obviously you're going to try to make it. Not always, but it's pretty often. Then I have 1 Dugaris. This was a lot better when I was playing Ice Barrier with the Extra Foolish Burials. I ended up not Extra Foolish Burial. Maybe it is Extra Foolish Burial, the one that sends a spell or trap. But Even without playing those, I do like the fact that a level 4 in Crystal Shark can make Dugaris, and then you can draw 2 discard a card if your hand's not that great. It can also put extra fish monster into your graveyard with his discard, and then you can still overlay all your Xyz armored stuff, so I do like the Dugaris. Last Xyz in the deck is the Zeus. This card is fair enough in your Xyz deck. And then next, I choose to play 2 rare fish, because this has come up several times. I've had many games where I actually go through both rare fish, so I do like playing both. Now what this means is there are several cards I'm not playing in the extra deck that you might want to consider. Something like SP Little Knight, if you have access to it, could come up even though you get locked into Xyz. You are running Triple Tactics Talent, so there undeniably will be times where you wish you could link into SP. And then something like Exciton Knight or Baguska or Ragna Zero also aren't in the deck because I'm simply choosing to play rare fish. That is the downside of the Instant Fusion package. However, again, because these are fish and they're not Silent Angler, I prefer these heavily to any other package. So I am sacrificing 2 extra deck spots, but I think it's worth it. And yeah, that's going to be it for the Shark deck profile. Let me know what you think down below. This is my first sort of attempt with the deck, and I have done a decent amount of testing, but I haven't done so much where I can confidently say the deck won't be changing anytime soon. If you have any advice, feel free to leave it down below, maybe how you're playing Shark or what you think of the deck in the current meta. I know, again, there are some passionate Shark players that will probably leave their opinions down below. I do have plans to maybe take a deck similar to this list to a regional. Of course, it will have some changes if I decide to take it to a regional, more than likely. And I don't know when that would be or which regional I plan to take that to. It's something I'm considering, but it would be nice to have a Shark regional top. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to like and subscribe. This has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.